Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Match at the Gathering. Here we have Matt on a green-white Stompy deck versus Devin on Reanimator, and I am not going to lie, while green-white Stompy or Death and Taxes may not seem like they would be favored versus Reanimator, the evidence seems to bear out differently, and a big part of that is the utility of some of these cards like Caracas as the main game plan for Reanimators often getting in a Gristlebrand. This guy does it all, 7/7 flying, lifelink. We got a Cabal Therapy here, stripping the Cauldron complete. That is brutal. Cabal Therapy requires you to name a card. Your opponent reveals their hand and exiles all copies of the card. Sometimes you're just going to whiff on that, but when your opponent plays a Stoneforge Mystic, that means you know what they got. And at this point, Stoneforge just swinging for one. Raucous does come down. Now Thalia gives some additional synergy with that Caracas. If Matt does get it out, he can protect it a little bit with Caracas. Not as well as if he had Aether Vials. Death and Tax is certainly the better at maintaining a Thalia lock between the two decks, but green adds a lot of potential as well. And we've got an Entomb. See what Devin has for non-legendary creatures. Well, it looks like a Sire of Insanity. That's very bad news. Sire of Insanity. Gonna wipe out both players' hands. At Once Upon a Time's hoping perhaps to hit a Solitude. Is not. And see how quickly this game ends. I mean, Matt may top deck a Swords to Plowshares. Certainly not over. Only 6 damage a turn. He does have a mana base as well. Forge swings. Reanimator Excavator. Gets rid of City of Traders. That land enters the battlefield. Matt can keep playing lands from his graveyard. The Excavator. Each one of these is going to potentially be a speed bump. Stoneforge and the Excavator can step in the way of this Sire of Insanity. A 6/4. Devin's definitely in a use it or lose it situation. Basically can just make land drops. Perhaps draw a Reanimate effect now that he has creatures in the bin. I do not understand attacking with the Stoneforge instead of... Oh, there he's actually representing a willingness to double block. Of course, he's got 4 power in front with the Excavator and the Elvish Spirit Guide. Sire's tiny backside. Just a 4-butt. Held off by this hodgepodge of green creatures. And Devin actually happy to make the trade and passes the turn. Once Upon a Time, digs. And I guess this is kind of the point I alluded to earlier. How this matchup actually does favor the Thalia decks. Sire of Insanity did not look like it was good enough. And now Devin grabbing a Gristlebrand off of Entomb. If that's really going to get the job done. There's a Caracas on the other side of the board. Seven cards is a lot. That may just be the correct line. But with the Caracas in play, likely that the best he can do is end up with a Sire of Insanity, which now Thought Not Seer goes after Devin's hand. Zoom. Expect. It looks like Chancellor of the Annex for Devin. And I would have guessed Reanimator Excavator would have been coming back from Matt. I can't quite see off camera. Wasteland goes after Devon's mana base. Yeah, I mean, it looks like he played that from the graveyard, so we can assume that that's a Raminap Excavator. Chancellor, 5/6 body. Mana base continuing to erode. Elementals potentially part of the mix here. We got a Cabal Therapy. He's a Skyclave Apparition. Both Grief and Solitude. Impactful printings from Modern Horizons too. I expect to be in these lists. And Devon just getting slowly strangled as his lands go away each turn. Matt's Wastelands destroying his non-basics. Chancellor all by its lonesome. Chalice of the Void now. Coming in, cutting off the 1-mana spells. It feels like just a matter of time before Matt's able to go wide enough around this Chancellor. Lotus Petal. It's actually an impactful card here. Chalice cuts off 1-mana spells, and Wasteland prohibits most of Devon's lands from sticking around for more than a second. Gives him the ability to leapfrog to a 2-mana spell such as Animate Dead. Even an Elishnorn not going to be a game winner at this point. Yeah, this is pretty bad for Devon. When the GP data was released prior to the, what was it, the banning of Renin 6, I believe that the analysis showed like an 80-20 win percentage for Death and Taxes versus Reanimator at the time, which was surprising to a lot of people that haven't gotten a ton of reps on both sides of the table, because it feels like Reanimator is the type of deck that you should just smash a fair deck. I mean, a lot of people think of one of the more lopsided matchups in the format as it's like Combo versus Death and Taxes, where they don't have Force of Will, they don't have any way of stopping you with discard. You can literally just goldfish them on the first turn. And I think that's just like a human psychology situation, because all that matters over the long haul is the win-loss record. Even though those losses feel awful, they still only count for one match. So, yeah, losing on the first turn when you're completely defenseless feels pretty powerless. If you're getting bumped out of a top 8 or, missing top 8 because of that, certainly that wound feels worse than if you feel like you had some say over it and maybe you could have adjusted your play accordingly. But at the end of the day, it actually does swing pretty hard in the favor of the Thalia deck, running Karakas, having answers to the board, being able to go after the mana base if things don't go well. And we'll see what Devon can do to adjust. Green-White Stompy could have any number of 8 cards. I mean, there's some really good bears in both green and white. Beating out game 3 here for... Oh, sorry, game 2. Devon actually lost that first game. Felt like the game was over. Feels like we would be on game 3 as he had that early Sire of Insanity, but Matt actually picking up the W. He's got a Faithless Looting. I think we might have seen a pregame Chancellor of the Annex. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Chancellor getting a double Lotus Petal into Animate Dead. And now Matt is the one playing underneath a Thalia-like effect, as whenever he casts any spell, it's going to get countered unless he pays 1. Jams the Mox Diamond into the Chancellor. That cleared the initial trigger. All of his spells will still cost 1 moving forward. The first spell of the game was going to cost an additional 2. Possible Matt just does not like the the potential of casting Mox Diamond and going down a land. It's not going to be about acceleration. Mercifully Animate Dead, giving -1 to Chancellor. Whole wall of text on Animate Dead. Bottom line of the cards is the one that really matters here. Enchanted creature getting -1, -0. So Chancellor just swinging for 4. 5-turn clock. Somewhat underwhelming. But it is a card that doesn't get handled by Karakas. Now Exhume. That paying 3 to Once Upon a Time. Finds a Thalia. Oh no. What an interesting line there. So Matt actually casting the Solitude. It's getting countered by the Chancellor trigger. And then the Exhume returning it to the battlefield, which then clears the Chancellor. Devin able to draw 7. It's also possible Matt being a good sport. I couldn't tell if Devin remembered the trigger or not. It is different than Thalia, so you actually have to remember the trigger as the controller of the Chancellor. Unlike Thalia, it's actually a problem if you let your opponent cast a spell, or if you intentionally don't pay the extra 1 for Thalia, that would be game rule violation as compared to just a missed trigger, even though they're very similar. Bristlebrand going absolutely haywire here. Bunch of dual lands for Devin. Not actually sure the best way to build Reanimator right now. Mono black build's also super spicy. A lot of the games end up playing the same way no matter what your mana base looks like. Just getting out a super early Gristlebrand, drawing a ton of cards, and winning. Kind of question of how you play around hate and sideboard options. Now Chancellor is joined in with Gristlebrand. And Grief goes up, hits a Once Upon a Time. Grief, I think a great addition. I feel like it's one of the most powerful cards in the set. Matt still game Wastelands and bounces Gristlebrand with Karakas. Magus to the Moon. It's a card Matt usually plays. Would stop the encroachment of this Wasteland. Oh, what did he just draw it for turn? Not going to go back and rewatch that. He did flash the Magus. Badlands is in the graveyard, perhaps just showing that that was well timed. Grief comes out of the graveyard as well. And now multiple Exhumes being played. Another Grief. Now Chancellor swings. Yeah. 2 Griefs and a Chancellor. How's that for non-legendary creatures? Chancellor just got cleared from the board. So I backed it up a little bit to follow what happened here. We've got Exhume, which brought back both Eldrazi Displacer and Grief. And Eldrazi Displacer is an absolute nightmare situation, as that can actually flicker Solitude. This is actually looking like Matt's gonna totally answer the situation. 3 mana. Able to flicker, and yeah, looks like he's just gonna completely stabilize. Now Stoneforge Mystic. Getting the Cauldron complete. And this looks like it's going to end up being a wrap here for Matt. He's got Cauldron complete, ready to come down off of Stoneforge Mystic. Solitude, ready to handle any creatures that Devin can put in the way. That is just one of the really cool things about the format. Fair decks stepping up to play against things that can do incredibly unfair things. But just drag them into the deep end. Find a way to win. Devin looks like he may just be considering how bad the situation really is. His Displacer's potentially going to be able to handle both of these creatures on the very next turn. Stoneforge puts in the Cauldron. Just going to be able to swing with haste. The Wax Wane takes out the Cauldron complete. And it looks like a Reanimate's going to be thrown at a target that will actually kill Devin as he goes out on his own terms, falling on his own sword as Matt pilots a green-white Stompy over Reanimator.